This is sidecar racing and it's absolutely crazy. They are three-wheeled bikes that can hit 160 miles an hour on the residential streets of the Isle of Man. But what's incredible is that it takes two people to drive this thing. One on the controls and one manipulating the balance of the bike. And controlling this thing at that sort of speed with walls, curbs and blind crests must be terrifying. But not as much as being the passenger whilst doing that. So today, let me explain the engineering and the insane driving skill behind sidecar racing. This is a Formula 2 sidecar, around 130 horsepower, 350 kilograms, including the riders, and a top speed of well over 160 miles per hour. They run standard 600cc 4-stroke bike engines and racing slicks. The speed they travel at is honestly astonishing. Now, sidecar racing is huge, with many different classes and events, from circuits like Brands Hatch and Alton Park to the scariest of them all, the Isle of Man Snaefell Mountain Course. The Isle of Man, statistically the most dangerous races in the world, and by quite some margin. The number of horrific crashes is endless, but despite this, hundreds of racers across bikes, superbikes and sidecars rock up every year to take it on. And whilst I do moan about organisers making tracks too sterile at the moment with massive runoffs, the risks at the TT are far higher than I personally would take. One misjudgment or one mechanical failure could send you off a hill or into a brick wall. The track weaves through tight island roads for 38 miles with tight sections and more open, weaving sections where riders are flat out for minutes at a time. These sidecars manage an average of 120 miles per hour around these 200 turns. And to put this into perspective, the top class of superbikes, which are far, far lighter, manage this with a 130 miles per hour average. The TT is a time trial event that is held over a fortnight. 1 week of practice, and you're going to need every minute of that, and a week of races. They set the riders off 10 seconds apart. So whilst you are racing the clock, if you're quick, you have to put in some ballsy overtakes too. If you want to see loads of quality footage on this, check out the Three-Wheeling channel linked below. And thank you to them for supplying a lot of the footage for this video. And this track would be terrifying in a car, with 4 wheels and a roll cage, one driver, and the ability to take left and right-handed corners at the same sort of speed. But sidecars have none of these things. But before we get into it, some lingo. The sidecar itself is called an outfit. The person on the right is called the driver, and the madman who's hanging off the side is called a passenger. Anyway, from an engineering perspective, what makes these sidecars unusual is that they aren't symmetrical. They have 2 wheels in line and then one on the side. So when I'm driving on track, whether it's in Caterhams or Formula 1 cars, you get a feel for the car's cornering ability and then apply this to both left-handers and right-handers. However, these sidecars actually take right-handers far quicker than left-handers. And this is down to, in right-handers, the outfit leaning on that sidecar wheel, where in left-handers, the whole thing wants to tip over. Years ago, these outfits used to look more like a bike and sidecar. However, now they are bespoke racing units with advanced aero and much improved performance. They are powered by a single rear wheel, the one behind the driver, and are steered by the front wheel through some very small handlebars. They can also outbrake superbikes down to the huge slick tyres and the enormous car brakes that stop all 3 wheels. And look here, they use flat racing tyres rather than the rounded bike tyres, so they have a much larger contact patch, so more grip in the corners and especially on the brakes. Now to the question I'm sure you're all wondering. What about the dude on the back? Well, they are called passengers, or more casually, monkeys. And that kind of makes sense. These guys have to be incredibly fit just to hold on at these speeds and G-forces. Their role is to maintain the balance of the outfit. Without them, the sidecar just wouldn't work. it would be minutes a lap slower around the TT course. So they cling on, staying out of the airflow on the straights and hang off either side around the corners, essentially making up for the uneven handling of the sidecar. Around right-handers, they climb over the top of the driver to keep the weight on the inside tyres. Then on left-handers, they hand precariously over the side of the bike. And this is the bit that looks the most sketchy. They very often skid their backs along the surface of the track and can even get knocked off if the driver gets it wrong. Along the straights, they duck out of the airflow, then pop up in the braking zones to add as much drag as possible. Then as the driver turns into the corner, they have to quickly but carefully get in position so that the bike sticks. So in a car, you trail brake into the corner, meaning you gently release the brake pressure as you enter. This is all to transfer the weight of the car as gently as possible. On a sidecar, the driver is still doing this, but with the added component of another person moving around too. And it must be so tough to coordinate these two things perfectly. Some passengers even count or feel the bumps. Also, they don't need to pop their head up to see when the next corner is coming, which around a 38-mile lap is mighty impressive. As you can imagine, it takes enormous trust from both parties. The driver has to trust that the passenger will be in place to give him grip when he needs it. Then the passenger has to trust the driver that he's got his estimations right. The passengers hold on to a few specific handles. The main one is in the center of the bike. The riders hold this through the highest G sections, the braking zones, where they have to be up pretty high on the bike whilst the driver is on the anchors. Then there are several smaller holds around the sidecar for the cornering sections, as well as a specially shaped platform with places for the passenger to jam their foot in for grip. It really is like rock climbing at 150 miles per hour. Now, what I find mad is also what the driver has to do. It's not like a car where the grip is more predictable and the balance of the car is pretty steady. The most a car changes is when the tyres wear or the fuel burns off, both of which happen slowly and predictably. But on these bikes, if the passenger isn't in the right place at exactly the right time, the bike won't have the grips you expect it to. There really are two people steering these sidecars. But the thing I can't get over is the enormous risk that every driver takes on this track. Many of the riders have rituals where they hug their families every time they get on the bike at this track, even in practice. There are too many crashes, many of which are tragic, so you can imagine the nerves when sat at that start line. But as we all know, all motorsport can be dangerous, and we go into it knowing the risks. The skill, composure and dedication from these riders demands huge respect. One thing I had to find out was, how do you build up to doing this? How do you first learn the ropes in hanging off the side of a sidecar at silly speeds? Well, just like what karting is to single-seaters, miniature sidecars is to sidecars. These are awesome. They are called mini F1 sidecars and they race on kart circuits. The racing is brilliant with some awesome battles and some massive sends. You can really see how the passengers move the weight around, getting on the inside of each corner, hanging way off the side of the outfit. You should watch this video where we explain another mad class of motorsport. Thanks very much for watching and thank you all for 700,000 subscribers. Myself and the whole team here at Driver 61 appreciate all of you watching our content.